I'm Sean Fennessey, and this is The Big Picture, a conversation show about so many movies. We're getting down to the end of the year, and there's so many titles we haven't had a chance to talk about. We're going to get into a whole bunch of them today, a whole bunch of Oscar stuff. We're going to talk about some Underseen movies with some Ringer All-Stars, including our producer Bobby Wagner here on the call right now. But there's some news. The Oscars Shortlist has hit, and so this is an annual tradition in which the Academy whittles down some categories, 10 categories, down to 15 or 20 nominee potentials. This is most notable probably for the documentary and international feature submissions. But I'm just going to run through some takeaways that I had from this Oscar shortlist, because some of the stuff is critical to what me and Joanna and Amanda, when she comes back, will be talking about over the course of the next 2 months. Top headline, Emilia Perez is not dead, not even close to dead, is probably as powerful as it's ever been in this Academy Awards race, even though the film has not been hugely critically acclaimed, even though the fact that most people who see it don't seem to love it, the Academy really likes it. In fact, this movie showed up on 5 lists, 6 times overall, including International Feature, Best Score, Best Sound, Makeup and Hairstyling, and twice in the dreaded Best Song category. We will circle back to that category shortly. Wicked also made the list 4 times, very notable, another film that is incredibly strong right now at the Oscars. The Substance is alive. We have not yet done a Best Picture Power Rankings for the month of December, but The Substance, making it or not making it, is a huge point of discussion that Joanna and I will have. This film currently made the shortlist for makeup and hairstyling, not for visual effects, but it did make it for makeup and hairstyling. That's notable. That means that people in the Academy are watching the movie, they're aware of it, at least in that branch, and they're getting ready to potentially recognize it when the nominees come out in January. Civil War, CR's favorite film of 2024, recognized in visual effects, but not in sound, which I find genuinely unnerving, because if there's certainly something to recognize the movie for, it's for its sound work. Speaking of interesting snubs, blankings, Bobby Wagner's beloved Furiosa, nothing here. Nothing here.
Do you have anything to say for yourself as the president of Furiosa Hater Nation
for
what you've done to that film and the craftspeople who created it?
I've done nothing to them. I've merely cited that I think it's a 7 out of 10, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think it's a masterpiece. I apologize to those who do, but it was not recognized. Not in sound, not in visual effects, not in any of the major below-the-line categories here at the shortlist. Not a good sign for Furiosa's chances in any other category here.
We take Mr. Miller for granted. We do. I mean, it's not Mad Max. And people, I think, particularly like when you have sci-fi, which the Oscars is not well known for rewarding over its many, many decades, and they feel like they have already anointed a previous version of this film in this universe, I just don't feel like they felt the need to do that. And even if they do feel accused for not doing it, they'll just point to Dune 2, which is fair. Because I think Dune 2 is a better film.
Well,
and it has more momentum.
I'm starting to have some concerns about the recognition for Dune Part 2, if I'm being honest with you. I think Wicked's below-the-line chances are growing by the day. But you're right, Fury Road received 10 nominations and won 6 Academy Awards. And so, yeah, maybe there's a little bit of a too soon aspect to this, where that film is only 9 years old. But anyway, Furiosa is gone. I think this also means Saturday Night is gone, because John Batiste's score for that film was also not shortlisted, one that I think at the beginning of Oscar season, many people felt had a chance. I think I might have included Saturday Night in one of my, maybe in my big bet. Is that possible? God, that was a long, long time ago when Amanda only had 1 child. Other notable takeaways here. The international race, which I'll run through all the potential nominees out of the 15 that were selected, but Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Cloud, which was the Japanese submission, was not recognized here, unfortunately. Kurosawa, someone you've heard Adam Naiman talk about on the show quite a bit in the last 12 months. I'm a huge fan of his work as well. I still haven't had a chance to see Cloud. Actually, I've seen only Chime, his short film from earlier this year, but Cloud did not get in.
I have some news for you about your big Oscar bet and Saturday Night. You included it in Best Picture.
Yeah, I thought I did. Amanda did not.
She did not.
Okay.
No.
She's I know for a fact that she's since seen the film.
Oh yeah? Are you willing to share her take?
No, because I want her to be able to come back and do her whole, like, here's what I saw, and here's what's great, and here's what you're wrong about, and all that. She had some strong takes about the Tracy Letts episode that are definitively wrong, but I'll let her explain some of those when she comes back.
Okay. You mean the most beloved podcast episode in the history of podcasting?
People enjoyed that. That was a very
was
warm
really nice.
reception. That was
Tracy was great.
very nice. A wonderful guest. Arguably the greatest guest of all time, and that is a challenge to all of our recurring guests who we love on this show. Good news. My 3 favorite film scores of the year were all shortlisted. That includes Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's Challenger score, Chris Bowers' score for The Wild Robot, and Daniel Blumberg's score for The Brutalist, which is now available to stream on Spotify. You may not want to stream it before you see the film, but once you start streaming it, you'll know why I keep going banana on this podcast over and over again, because it moves me to my core. Hans Zimmer's work in Dune Part 2, speaking of Bob, deemed ineligible. Did you hear
Why
about
is that? No.
I think because there's too much previously used material.
From Dune Part 1.
Notably, though, Wicked eligible, despite the fact that it's from a Broadway show and should otherwise be ineligible. A conspiracy? Perhaps.
Yeah,
Watch this
maybe.
space.
You should start doing wicked conspiracy theories. From what I've learned on the internet in the past few weeks, it does numbers.
It certainly does. I'm trying to not talk about Wicked too much, if I'm being honest with you.
Good idea.
Alien Romulus, 3 times on the list here. Pretty incredible.
Good.
Also on
Good
the list,
movie.
Wild Robot 3 times, and Gladiator 2. So shortlist is a weird thing. It does not indicate necessarily strong Oscar chances. You see Romulus?
I did. I liked it a lot. It was
it's good.
Very solid 3.5 star movie. I was legitimately scared and legitimately impressed
A
by
Furiosa.
the computer generated imaging in the film. It looked very good.
It did. One other thing to cite here that is also related to your interest, Bob, is that Diane Warren was recognized for her original song for the 6888, which is a forthcoming Tyler Perry feature on Netflix. Diane Warren, of course, has been nominated many, many times, I believe 16 times for an Academy Award, and has never won. I haven't heard this song. Doesn't seem like a song she'd win for. And yet the Oscars keeps dragging her to the dance and telling her that she has to go home empty-handed. Very sad. I saw the TV Glow, which had a number of original songs, was not recognized in the shortlist. How do you feel about that?
I'm pretty upset because not only did it have a number of original songs, but it had a number of original songs targeted directly at guys like me. Phoebe Bridgers on stage singing a song, and I saw the TV Glow. That's sick.
Yeah, not according to the Academy voters. You're a little out of the demo, or they're out of your demo is maybe more like it.
And I'm okay with that.
I am as well.
Although I do like the Brutalist score, and I like it even more when you sing it here on this podcast. Does that count as... Do you think that counts as a Spotify stream when you sing it on a Spotify original podcast?
Daniel Blumberg, do not hit me up for royalties, bro. I'm just praising your work, which is exceptional. International feature. Let's just go through the list of films. I haven't even seen all of these films. This is the time of year when it becomes clear to me kind of what I have to knock off of my list so that I can hopefully competently discuss some of this stuff. I've seen quite a bit. I know you've seen a couple of these as well, Bobby. But so international feature, the way that this works is that a nation has to submit a title, and only one title from each country can be submitted for the international feature Oscar. I don't think it's going to be this way for too much longer. I think everyone realizes this is not a good way of doing this. One of your favorite films of the year, All We Imagine as Light, is an Indian film, but India did not select this film. And so the likelihood of that movie being recognized at the Oscars is significantly lower, even though I think if it were eligible here, it would be here and maybe could have a chance to challenge Emilia Perez, which is by far the front runner. But this is even though they've changed the name of this award from foreign language feature to international feature, I think there's still some evolution that's required. But nevertheless, I'll tell you the titles of the films. From Brazil, it's I'm Still Here. From Canada, Universal Language, a film I really liked and was happy to see here. From the Czech Republic, Waves, which I've not yet seen. From Denmark, I just saw The Girl with the Needle. That's added here. From France, Emilia Perez, of course. From Germany, The Seed of the Sacred Fig, we've talked about a few times on the show. From Iceland, Touch, which I believe is the Balthazar Kormakur film that Focus put out earlier this year. From Ireland, Kneecap. CR and I discussed it very briefly. I saw it back at Sundance. Incredibly fun movie. From Italy, Vermiglio, which I'm about to watch tonight. So I'm looking forward to that. From Latvia, Flow, which you will hear about later on in this podcast. Exceptional movie. From Norway, Armand, which stars Renata Rensby. I've not yet had a chance to catch up with this one. From Palestine, From Ground Zero. I've also not had a chance to see this. From Senegal, Dahomey, Madi Diop's new movie, which I just saw on Friday and is streaming on Mubi right now, and I highly encourage people to check out. From Thailand, How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies, which I've heard great things about, but has not yet been put in front of me, so hopefully I'll see that one soon. And then last but not least, from the United Kingdom, Santosh, which which I've also not seen, but we'll probably see before the year is out. Anything jump out to you about this, Bob?
I actually think I've only seen one of these. I've only seen Seed of the Sacred Fig. Universal Language is high on my list of movies that I want to see and haven't seen, as well as Dahomey. But I have a lot of catching up to do here. I think what stands out to me is that it just feels as Byzantine and silly as ever, the way that this category is structured. We didn't need like a second layer of political machinations to the Oscars. Like that's what the Oscars already is. We didn't need like a pre-Oscars before the Oscars where like people in rooms decide what even gets nominated. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because when there's a country that controls its sort of arts councils that make these decisions, then invariably any film that is critical of the governing body of those countries is not likely to submit a film with those criticisms. And then you have these workarounds, like in the case of Seed of the Sacred Fig, which is from an Iranian filmmaker named Mohammad Rusaloff. And the story of how he made the film, to me, is more remarkable than the movie, and I think has been helpful in campaigning for the movie. But this is it's the German submission. And there are some reasons why Germany is able to submit a film like this, even though the film is entirely about an Iranian family. So, there's some shenanigans, I think, in the way that this is all strategized and worked against. It reminds me a little bit of when you would have, who were the two brothers, one of whom played for England and one of whom played for, I think, Cameroon in the World Cup. And even though I think they were both English citizens, and you were like, well, how can one guy be on that team and another guy be on the other team? Or maybe, no, it was Ghana. It wasn't Cameroon. It was Ghana. God, I can't remember their names. Two really, really talented soccer players, I think, who both played in the Premier League. But it's this sort of thing where you're like shifting what the home countries can and should be in a system that already has a lot of flaws. So I really feel like this is ripe for an overhaul, given the way that world cinema has profoundly and positively influenced the Oscars in the last 5 or 10 years. Like this is a shift that just, I feel like, has to be made.
And those are the Boateng brothers. I believe. It was Germany and Ghana. And Kevin Prince played for Ghana, and Jerome Boateng, who's like a very famous, very important player for the German national team. I just think that it kind of like, if you reverse engineer it, it kind of encourages the wrong things, because so many of these independent or international smaller budget movies, like the Oscars boost for these movies helps them to get made in the future. The idea that it might get an Oscar nomination and get put on these shortlists. And so if the production companies, the financiers of these movies are already thinking in advance, no, we're not going to finance this because we know that it's too critical of the country or the governing body that it's being created in, it's just really, really, really narrowing the types of stories that get told and then get rewarded at the Oscars and then put on a much more international stage for more people to actually see, which I think ultimately maybe isn't the goal, but should be one of the goals, at least, to get more people to be able to see these movies from younger filmmakers, from more experimental filmmakers.
Yeah, I think that the Academy has done an amazing job of widening the expectation for the first time really in about 35, 40 years. In the 1970s, if you look through the nominations, you can see all kinds of international. I was just reading about Fellini, and I'm thinking of doing a Fellini rewatch in 2025. And Fellini was recognized in multiple categories, in screenplay, in director, in international film, all through the late 60s and all the way up through the early 80s. And he was kind of a consistent presence, even though he didn't make any films in English. And then that kind of went away and went very quiet in the 80s and 90s and has had a bit of a comeback, especially as the Academy has widened and deepened its bench of voters. So this is just a remnant of old administrations and old thinking that has got to be changed. Let's talk quickly about documentary feature. I've seen quite a few of these films, though not all of them as well. They are The BB Files, Black Box Diaries, Dahomey, which is also an international, Daughters, Eno, Frida, Hollywood Gate, No Other Land, Porcelain War, Queendom, The Remarkable Life of Ibelin, which I'll get into momentarily, Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, Sugarcane, Union, and Will and Harper. A number of these movies debuted at Sundance. In fact, more than half of them did. I wanted to point out two movies that I haven't seen, one of which I think you have seen. I haven't seen Eno, which is a documentary about the famed British music producer Brian Eno, who has, one of the most incredible discographies of any person alive, anybody in the history of pop music, and also someone who has a very distinct and fascinating working style, and that that style is reflected in the way that you watch the movie, which it has a kind of generative component where every time you watch it in a movie theater, it is a little bit different than the way it had been previously shown. It's a little hard for me to explain how that works because I have not yet seen it, but the film, you can't stream it at home. It only shows in movie theaters, and because of this generative component, which is correlated to Eno's philosophy as a producer and musician, it needs to be like in a very closed and controlled environment to experience it. They're working on ways to share it with the public so that this same generative experience can go on. But I find something like this fascinating because this is very different from a movie like Frida, which is a fairly standard but creative biopic about a famous artist, or Will and Harper, which you can just stream on Netflix, and is about Will Harper and Harper Steele and Will Ferrell and Harper Steele and their longtime friendship. Or even a movie like Union, which is a fascinating story about the unionization efforts in warehouses in Amazon, but does not have distribution at the moment. And no company has taken on the distribution. So the filmmakers are distributing the movies sort of independently and trying to put it in as many theaters and single screens as they possibly can. One of the reasons why I think is because it's just a very complicated issue politically and rhetorically for those filmmakers. And Amazon, of course, is a big player in Hollywood these days. But I think you did see No Other Land, right, Bobby?
I did. Yeah, I saw it at New York Film Festival. It's incredible. It's remarkable. It's like kind of stunningly of the moment. It captures something that has been so at the forefront of political conversation in the entire world for the last 2 years. And yet at the same time, like, it is that timeless style of documentary filmmaking where it just puts you right there, right in front of everything. And the subject of the documentary is also like a social media documentarian himself. And so his contributions are kind of meta in a way too. And it's I thought it was phenomenal.
I'm really looking forward to seeing that. That film, just like Union, still doesn't have a distributor. I think the perception is just that this is, one, a very hard film to market and sell to audiences, and two, is a controversial subject matter that no one that is in the business of trying to make money wants to have to choose a perspective on. Obviously, part of the film, as I understand it, is that it's not that kind of proposition, that it is about trying to understand the war with a significant more amount of depth and complexity. Is that fair to say?
But in what sense? What do you mean?
In that it's not a political film that is sort of like you must choose a side. In this conflict.
It's not like that. It's more about the ramifications of the actual events themselves, in the sense that it displays the lives of people who are being displaced by the conflict between Israel and Palestine. It tells the story of the IDF coming in and trying to move these Palestinian people out of their homes because they're trying to expand their military operations and turn this land into more of a military base. And that's why they claim that they have the justification to be doing that. And it tells the stories like literally from the inside of the homes, like as they're being torn down. So obviously, as you allude to, politically explosive subject matter in an elevator pitch. I think the way that it plays out, I would challenge anybody to watch this film and not be able to find empathy with the people whose lives are being displayed, but obviously corporations don't always think that way in terms of how they distribute these movies, because it's hard to get people to watch movies that are hard to watch. And it is hard to watch. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's not. But again, yeah, this is a movie that's in my top 10 of the year. I think it's an incredible act of documentary filmmaking.
Both categories will be interesting tests of the new Academy and the kinds of films that they're interested in and the kinds of stories that they want to tell. I would say, hard to say not having seen Eno, but essentially every other film that is on the documentary feature list could be perceived as a film with a strong political point of view, a strong ethical point of view, even perhaps. So, that's not uncommon here. But one thing that has been noted is that the documentary branch in particular is very esoteric and very unpredictable. The fact that, Will and Harper and even Daughters and even Frida and Sugarcane all made it, even though they were kind of presumed to be like little more mainstream, a little bit more front-runnery, is Fascinating Sugarcane is available to watch, I believe, on Disney Plus right now. Daughters is available to watch on Netflix. I mentioned Daume is on Mubi at the moment. Will and Harper on Netflix as well. The Remarkable Life of Ibelin on Netflix. Netflix always a big contender in this category. They tend to acquire a lot out of festivals. Some of these are darn good films. I'll talk about one of them in a minute. That's more or less my thoughts on the short list. We'll see. We've got, I think, exactly 1 month until the nominations come out. And we've still got a couple of more movies that are going to open wide over the next few weeks that are going to impact the conversations and the expectations. I don't know what the fuck's going to happen. If I'm being perfectly honest with you. This is in theory very exciting. And when I talk to other people who spend time thinking about this and even creating content around it, they're like, isn't this great? But for me, ball knower, man for whom it is important to know things and get things correct.
Yeah.
Not ideal. That's my frailty. That's my flaw. That's a sad truth about me, but it is a truth, and it's important for me to express it here.
Are you going emo boy mode on me?
It's important to know where the weaknesses are. You know, like I've been having some oblique issues physically. You know, I'm pursuing physical therapy. I have to solve these problems. So maybe
you got to get in on the yoga game, bro. This is my new. I've come back to yoga. I was a big yoga person in college.
I know.
And then I got a job, and I was like, "What if I didn't do this? What if I didn't dedicate time to this?" But you got to get back in that.
Who are these people that just go out and do things at 1:30 p.m. on a Wednesday? That just for themselves, that are not part of the act of working. I don't know. Who are these men and women?
I'm going to be really real with you. Like, it's me a lot of the time because I work West Coast hours, you know?
Yeah,
so
that's
it's like 5 p.m. when we're doing our pods.
That's
for
true.
me.
Sometimes you're on with me at 9 p.m. your time. So it's a different scenario.
Can I posit you a small theory about why the race feels so mysterious?
Please.
There's just no front runner. Mm-hmm. Like, so many movies that we thought might come out are either getting pushed back till next year or came out and didn't quite do what we expected them to do. And so the front runners are weird. The fact that Anora has been a front runner for as long as it has been is just like, by conventional Oscar wisdom, like kind of wrong. You know what I mean? Like, kind of, it's unfamiliar to us. And it almost feels like, in a way, you know, when Parasite ended up winning, I think Parasite was kind of like more like an Anora, a beloved film from a filmmaker that people have a big relationship to, but maybe is not super mainstream. And then it wins. It's this upset. We're all so happy, you know, but we don't really have something for it to upset necessarily. And so by default, we've been saying, okay, maybe Anora is going to win Best Picture. That's kind of weird, right?
No, you're right.
We talked about that for 9 months.
No, it's a great point and a great point of comparison, because in that year, I very vividly remember the weekend after Thanksgiving going to see 1917, and 1917 having this huge surge over those 6 weeks towards the end of the year, where I still like that movie quite a bit. I was really impressed by the way that it was made. And when I saw it, I thought to myself, ooh, this could really displace all of the frontrunners, which at the time, I guess, were sort of like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Parasite, Marriage Story, Ford Ferrari, whatever, you know, on down the line of films that came out that year, the best movie year in a while. And 1917 didn't quite get there, but it did the thing that you're talking about, which is it disrupted the momentum of a movie that could have been seen as a frontrunner or one that could have risen to the top. I'm keeping Anora in that place as far as I can tell, because nothing has really come along that has really displaced it. The Brutalist, I think, is too big and art housey, but there is a world in which its slow rollout over the next 6 weeks works in its favor. I am not discounting that. Joanna and I will get into all this at the end of this week, and we'll talk about the different permutations and what's rising and what's falling. But it's been interesting so far.
I just bought tickets to see Brutalist again. 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning. Let's get it.
I think that's a great way to do it, because then you can get out and you can get a giant sandwich afterwards.
That's precisely my plan.
Yeah,
that's
protein
life in
shake in the morning,
baby.
Huge turkey sandwich right afterwards, like after CR beds down his wife.
His wife Hawk to a girl, you mean?
Yes, of course, Hawk to Orion. All right, let's talk about underseen and underappreciated. We're going to go down the list with some Ringer staffers, including Bob. But I just, for the record, I want to state I've seen, as of today, 307 new releases from this year. I'm still doing this thing where I'm trying to see as many of the new releases as I possibly can. Honestly, one, because I'm ill and everyone knows I'm ill, but two, because I'm trying to do a good job with the show. And like to me, like the purpose of the show is to present the contemporary cinema in a sincere way, celebrate what needs to be celebrated, set aside what maybe doesn't need to be celebrated, unless, of course, it's kind of unignorable. I've already seen actually 11 2025 films as well, so I'm starting to make moves on next year, Bobby. I don't
Time traveling.
You are traveling? Oh, I'm time
No,
traveling.
you're time traveling.
Yeah. Well, the studios now I think have figured out that it's good to show me earlier rather than later. So I don't know what to make of that. But
Is that because your brain turns into mush by the time you've seen about 200 of these movies, and the last 100 you can't remember?
You know, as a man who sat through Mufasa at 11 a.m. yesterday, the answer to that question is yes. I did want to spotlight a couple of movies that I didn't get a chance to talk about, or maybe didn't get a chance to explore in depth before we let some other folks do the same. So I'll just go through my list really quickly. My number one pick is Christmas Eve in Miller's Point, which is a movie by Tyler Taormina. You may have seen his first film, Ham on Rye, which was a bit of an indie sensation. I think IFC distributed it in 2019. This movie is fascinating. It stars Matilda Fleming, Maria Dizia, Ben Schenkman, Francesca Scorsese. That's right, Martin Scorsese's daughter. Elsie
The goat
Fisher.
TikToker.
She truly is. Sawyer Spielberg, Greg Turkington of On Cinema at the Cinema, Michael Cera, a handful of other folks that you'll recognize. This movie, which is a kind of impressionistic, emotionally flashing series of micro events that take place all in one home on Long Island on Christmas Eve night, is the most Long Island thing that has ever happened in movies. I have never seen the experiences of my own life as a person with a huge extended family and a child of divorce with multiple extended new second families and step families. I've never seen that experience rendered so deeply, profoundly, humorously, and oddly in the way that only Long Island can be odd, or though maybe New Jersey as well, as this movie does. Miller's Place is a place on Long Island. Miller's Point is not, but it is very clearly a stand-in. Tyler, the filmmaker, is from Long Island, and you can fucking tell because he's got the beats down. He's got a very interesting kind of roving camera filmmaking style. You can see definitely some Robert Altman influence in the way that he sets up sequences. You can see like a very sincere but also subtly sarcastic aspect to this. This movie is streaming right now on AMC Plus if you are a subscriber to that service, which I think is incredibly underrated because you get AMC and you get Shudder and you get IFC all in a bundle. Not bad. It's also on VOD if you're not a subscriber to AMC Plus. It's just about one night at a family Christmas party on Christmas Eve. And that's the whole thing. And then like the teenagers who are hanging out there and maybe some of the things they do. Very simple, very straightforward, but a very beautiful and fun movie that I encourage people to check out. My next pick is a movie that I have used as a punchline for Amanda a few times, but that I am sincerely recommending here. It's called Hundreds of Beavers.
It's a lot of beavers.
It's a lot. There are hundreds of them. You may have heard of this movie. It's finally available to stream on Tubi, the greatest streaming service, as we all know. It's directed by Mike Cheslick. It's written by Cheslick and Ryland Brixton Cole-Tews. He is also the star of this movie. The logline of this movie, I don't think does it service. The logline is a drunken Applejack salesman must go from zero to hero and become North America's greatest fur trapper by defeating hundreds of beavers. So that makes it sound like it's a prequel to The Revenant, and that's not at all what this movie is. This movie is like, it's Buster Keaton meets Jackass meets a Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote cartoon. Like, it is pure slapstick, Marx Brothers, silent film, Ralph Bakshi animation, all kinds of crazy, wild, persistent, durational comedy gags. Like, every time you think that they have topped the best possible gag they could pull off with these beavers in giant suits, they go to the next level. It's extremely funny, extremely fun. I never got a chance to see this movie in a movie theater. I've been told this is the absolute best way to see it. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do so. But even at home, I really, really loved it. And give it a try. It's like, maybe this is the product of having seen 300 new movies, but something that is this different and this creative, I think is worth recommending.
I saw they did like I didn't see it yet, but I saw last week that I think they did like a physical release of it on Blu-ray via Vinegar Syndrome, and it like blew it up. It sold out like within minutes, I think, which was kind of a cool thing to see.
I didn't know that it sold out. That's very cool. I did see that Vinegar Syndrome distributed it, and I'm not surprised. There's a cult around this movie. It's a very strong cult. It's and a worthy cult in many ways. My third film is one I just saw last night that I had been recommended to me by a number of people that I don't want to say too much about because I think people should watch it for themselves. But the movie is called Femme. It's directed by Sam H. Freeman and Ng Chun Ping. And it's an adaptation of their short film of the same name, which is about a drag performer who is attacked after a performance in a convenience store. And Jules, the performer, finds a way to make a connection with the man who attacked him. And the movie becomes a kind of sustained thriller from that point forward. Really, really interesting movie about sex, power, abuse, and a very modern movie, a nice companion, I would say, to Red Rooms, the film that I think I talked with Chris about in October, but then Adam had it as his number one movie of the year. I know CR has since seen it, and he's loved it too. And I think Red Rooms, we're going to look back in 10 years and be like, Red Rooms is one of the most significant movies. This movie actually has a lot thematically and structurally in common. So check out Femme. That's streaming on Hulu right now. I mentioned The Remarkable Life of Ibelin, which is on Netflix. It's one of the shortlisted documentaries. It's directed by Benjamin Ree, who made a movie in 2020 called The Painter and the Thief. I love this movie out of Sundance. My father-in-law, God bless him, he texted me 2 weeks ago. I think he's texted me twice this year. He's not a big texter. He's a little bit older. But he texted me out of nowhere and he just said, very formally, Sean, have you seen this film, The Remarkable Life of Ibelin? If so, I would love to just hear what you thought of it, which was just a very generous text to receive. My father-in-law is a wonderful man. And I realized that I just hadn't spent any time talking about it since Sundance, but it's about a kid named Matt Steen who was born with muscular dystrophy. And near the end of his life, and he died very young, and I'm not spoiling anything to say that because it's revealed very early in the film, he started keeping a blog about his experiences in his life and his experiences with World of Warcraft, the video game, which became a portal to a new kind of existence for him, not just to, what you could describe in a cliche way, escaping whatever it was that he was enduring on a day-to-day basis, but more so to build a community for himself. And he made this incredible world of friends and connections, deep emotional connections to people inside of World of Warcraft. And it's very common to make fun of gamers and to identify gaming as a toxic kind of lifestyle. We just saw in Anora that there's a gamer bro in that movie who does not have the best perspective on life or know how to treat women. But this is an amazing document about what art and the way in which you can kind of repel yourself deep into your own interests can sometimes help you find community and meaning in your life. And I think this is a really powerful and sincere and deep movie, and also tremendously creative when you see the way that the filmmakers use World of Warcraft to tell Matt's story in the second half. So, this movie won't be for everybody, but I think it deserves even more love than it's getting. And it's not the kind of movie that's going to top the Netflix charts. It's a smaller film, but it's really, really beautiful. So check out The Remarkable Life of Ibelin if you haven't had a chance to see it. And then my fifth one is a little bit of a grungy recommendation, but I saw that it hit Hulu and I liked it a little bit, and so I want to give it a quick shout out. It's called What You Wish For. This is definitely the most genre-focused movie I'm talking about here right now. It's written and directed by a guy named Nicholas Tomney. It stars Nick Stahl, who was a big star in the late 90s and 2000s. You may remember him from movies like In the Bedroom. He hasn't been in a lot of movies in the last 10 years. I know he's had some personal problems over that time, but he's always an actor who I was always drawn to. And this movie, which is really interesting, it's about a chef who's really down on his luck, and he goes to visit an old friend in an exotic locale who's working as a chef. And some things happen, and this friend that Nick Stahl plays has to fill in for his friend in the role as a chef. And things kind of unravel from there in an intriguing way. This is just like a darn good episode of The Twilight Zone, stretched over 87 minutes. So I would check out What You Wish For if you like a kind of grim and grimy crime of some kind. Couple of honorable mentions for you. I did mention Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, which is on the documentary shortlist, and I talked about it on our top 5 movies of the year episode. I don't need to go into too much depth about this film anymore, but I want to underline it because in a just world, it would be seen by millions of people, and it is a fascinating evolution of documentary filmmaking and blending of music and text and storytelling. And I don't want to say conspiracy theorizing because that undermines the narrative that it's trying to share, but I think exploring alternative histories is maybe a safer way to describe it, about the relationship between America and Africa in the 1960s. I got to give some more love to A Different Man, which I never had the chance to actually have a discussion about on the podcast, even though I interviewed Sebastian Stan, who's one of the stars in the movie. This is a movie that's actually doing a little bit better in the awards race than I was expecting it to. It's a very dark comedy about an aspiring actor who is born with a condition that makes his face appear as though it is disfigured, and he undergoes a radical surgery to look different and more like he wants to look. And he achieves some success in his life after that happens, but realizes that nothing has really changed inside of him. And he then encounters a man who resembles the man he used to resemble. And it throws him into a wild discombobulation emotionally. Great movie. Stan, Renata Rensby, and Adam Pearson. This is definitely going to end up probably in my top 20 or so. We didn't talk about Janet Planet. I mentioned it coming out of Telluride in 2023. Very quickly, Annie Baker's new movie, or first film, I should say, the playwright whose work I've loved over the years, stars Julianne Nicholson and Zoe Ziegler as a mother and a daughter living in Vermont, I think in the late 90s. And someone who's watched a mother and a daughter have like a profoundly complicated and deep connection, this movie gets that very, 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 very right. And if you've ever been interested in that kind of relationship, perhaps this movie will speak to you. It is a very quiet and slow-moving film. Be warned, I suppose. But it's on Max right now, if you're interested. And then, last but not least, is The Devil's Bath, which is extremely grim. There's no other way to say it. I think Tracy Letts mentioned this on the show last week. It's directed by Veronica Franz and Severin Fiala. I finally got around to it. It is streaming on Shudder right now. It is based on a book called Suicide by Proxy in Early Germany, Crime, Sin, and Salvation. It's about communities in Germany and Austria in hundreds of years ago who could not be saved if they were to commit suicide, and so they found other ways to find salvation. This movie is not for the faint of heart. It is deeply, deeply upsetting. And it's not a horror movie per se, but it is a very piercing portrait of what happens when things come apart in your mind, especially from a female perspective. It's very much about women in these communities in Germany and Austria. It's reductive to say this movie's fucked up, but it is fucked up. And I enjoyed it. So please check it out. It's called The Devil's Bath. Okay, let's go to slightly lighter fare by chatting up our buddy Chris Ryan. Okay, I'm here with Chris Ryan. We're talking about the first of the Ringer All-Stars' underseen, underappreciated, misunderstood works of cinematic art this year. But we're talking about a more recent film. This may turn out to be one of the most watched movies of 2024 for all we know.
Is this number one on Netflix already?
It was number one within one day, which is pretty remarkable and tells you a lot about at least what the Netflix audience wants. What's the movie you picked?
We're doing Carry On.
Yeah.
Jaume Collet-Serra's new film. Did I pronounce that right?
I know someone who's worked with him and he calls him Jaume.
Oh, okay, Jaume.
Which is news to me because I once interviewed the man and I called him Yaum through the entire interview and he did not correct me.
So we got 3 different pronunciations in 30 seconds. Can we call him JCS?
JCS is great.
Yeah, okay.
Who is JCS for the listeners who don't know and haven't been following our work together for the last 7 or 8 years?
We've done a lot of pods about garbage genres.
Mm-hmm.
JCS is the prince of all of them. If you had given him garbage sci-fi, garbage espionage, anything, he could do it. He makes the best B movies. He's the best B movie director in the world right now, I think.
I fully agree with you, but he has been in a bit of
He was in the wilderness.
A rock-shaped The Rock-shaped oblivion for a couple of years there, where he, his last couple of films are Black Adam, the DC Universe film that nearly broke me on this show, and may have broken the superhero trend. And previous to that was Jungle Cruise, a Disney adaptation of a ride that appears in their parks.
And that was The Rock and Emily Blunt.
The Rock and Emily Blunt.
Right.
Prior to that, though, he was on an incredible streak.
Should we just go through some of the highlights?
Please.
He goes pro in 05 with House of Wax, which is actually underrated.
Agreed.
And is a pretty good... Is that Cuthbert? Is that Elisha Cuthbert in that one?
And Paris Hilton.
Incredible performance.
Mm-hmm.
2009, you see what many still consider his best film, which is Orphan. But I get really down when he gets into Liam Neeson.
Yep.
Unknown, nonstop, run all night. Just some incredible, like, man with a gun thrillers. And The Shallows is a personal project of mine.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an incredible shark attack movie. That's with Blake Lively.
It is.
And the bird in that movie is named Steven Seagal.
Intriguing.
I've talked about this before. I've talked about Steven Seagal. More Liam Neeson with The Commuter, then this wandering into the wilderness with The Rock, Jungle Cruise, and Black Adam, and then he's back with Carry On.
So Carry On is a film set at an airport in Los Angeles, LAX,
Yes.
at Christmas time.
Yes.
There are elements of the film Die Hard.
Yes.
There are elements of the film Die Hard 2, Die Harder. There are elements of the film Phone Booth, a movie I enjoy, a Joel Schumacher, Colin Farrell movie. It is a little bit of speed.
There are elements of the podcast Smartless.
Yes, that's
it's about walking around an airport listening to Jason Bateman in your AirPod.
That is absolutely true. There's a bunch of other movies that are like this. I thought of Nick of Time. Remember Nick of Time with Johnny Depp and Christopher Walken? These sort of like the man with the all-seeing eye can see you and he needs you to do things, otherwise someone that you care about will become injured or killed.
Yes.
And in this case, Taron Egerton plays a young TSA agent.
Yeah, a little bit of like a slacker.
Yeah.
Kind of a fail son.
Or late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah. He's followed his girlfriend Nora out to California. They've both gotten jobs at the airport. She's an operations manager for Northwinds.
Absolutely.
Thinking maybe that's like kind of like an Alaska kind of.
Sure. What's the
airline.
Salary there? She pushing
I think
six
she
figures
probably
yet?
does like 85 with really good bennies.
Do you think she picks up the check at dinner?
Well, that's an issue for them.
Yeah.
Because she's prego with his ego.
Yeah.
And,
That's absolutely
and he's
right.
got to get his shit together and really like apply himself. The problem is that what he really wants to be is a cop. But he failed the police academy entrance exam or whatever. He got rejected by the Los Angeles Police Department. They rejected Taron Egerton.
Okay. You make it sound like that is not a hallowed institution.
I was just noting that he failed.
Have you ever taken a cop test?
No, I thought about it
just
to see, but I think I have mentioned before that I would like to be jumped straight to homicide. Like I would want to go straight to major crimes.
Yeah. You have kind of a Kyle Secor from Homicide vibe, actually. I think you'd fit right in.
Yeah, so the premise for this movie is essentially this is like a kind of go nowhere TSA agent who's trying to like make a New Year's kind of push to like get his shit together. Gets himself put on like a pretty prominent shift analyzing bags as they go through the security check at LAX. And after one tray goes through, there's a leftover earpiece. He puts the earpiece in and who's talking to him? But Jason Bateman.
Incredible.
Jason Bateman, who is like, if you don't do what I tell you to do, Nora, your girlfriend, is going to die. And so most of the film is taken up of this kind of pantomime where Bateman is directing his actions. He's got to, basically at one point he's going to have to let a bag go through that he shouldn't. And, as a viewer, I was watching and I was like, I'm sure this is going to be like a twist with the bag where it can't be that dark. Or maybe Jason Bateman will be like Alan Rickman, where he's like, I'm not a terrorist. I'm just a robber. But he's a terrorist. And it is turned out to be very dangerous Russian nerve gas that is being put on a plane with a congresswoman.
His end goals, though, are still entirely financial in nature.
Well, yeah, he's a facilitator.
Yeah.
He's apolitical.
And what do you think about his work? Is it something that would appeal to you as a potential third career?
As a JCS movie goes, there was a lot about Aleppo in this film that I did not expect to be considering.
There was. Would you think of this as a work of political art?
Not really.
Okay.
I thought it was like very entertaining, but clearly almost shot in 3 discrete chunks. And there was like the days they had Bateman, VO, and also on set. There was all the Taron stuff in the fake LAX. And then there is the investigation into what is happening being led by one of our great actors, Daniel Deadweiler.
This is my favorite part of the movie.
Who, at one point in this movie, has to get out of a car and say, "What do you got, detective?" And I'm like, that's Daniel Deadweiler.
It does feel like active winking self-parody. The same way that The Shallows felt like it was ingesting the entire history of shark movies and then just kind of like burping it out a little bit. Just be like, I know, like this is a little bit of a gentle nod, a gastrointestinal nod to this thing. And, these kinds of movies, frankly, powered Hollywood between 1987 and 1998. We don't really get very many movies like this anymore. I think it's very fun to have it. A little bit of a rickety script on this one, I would say.
Yeah.
The Colette Serra filmmaking style is still just incredibly kinetic and fun and engaging.
So can we talk about one of the best car crashes I've seen in the movies
this is
in
the
like
best
10 years?
scene in the movie. Actually, I know somebody who worked on it and I emailed them. And the minute I finished watching it, and I was like, that fucking rocks.
Was that Logan Marshall Green?
It was not. I wish I knew that man for his work in Prometheus and now this.
There is a car crash scene, without giving anything really away about the movie, that is breathtaking and is like so fake it's beyond fake to real, back to fake, but is the kind of kinetic thing that he's capable of, that he envisions. I wish there was like 2 more things like that in this movie.
I agree with you.
The rest of it is kind of like, I'm running and now I'm going to punch you, but I got shot, but I can run. Yeah,
it's largely a chase movie.
Yeah.
The car crash, though, is incredible. How did you think it stacked up to the car crash in Smile 2? Because they're very similar, and they're shot very similarly, which is it has this sort of like oscillating camera style on both people.
The Smile 2 gets points taken off for not also having a gunfight
good point.
during the car
Good
crash.
Point. Where are you at with Logan Marshall Green at this point? Have you held your
The
stock?
stock is still there.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's he been up to? Has he gone into television? Like, first of all, he has a totally different head of hair in this film.
Well, he shaved his beard.
Okay.
That's like his calling card, is kind of his invitation beard. And I think he has facial hair in Prometheus before he gets deformed.
I mean, so in 2018, he appears in he's the star of Lee Winnell's Upgrade.
Yeah,
I was like, this guy is Lance Henriksen 2.0.
Oh.
He's Scott Glenn 2.0.
Yes.
He's like gonna be awesome as like the lead of many good genre movies, but never become like the super duper star that we
just start
need.
comparing guys to like, that's Jean-Paul Belmondo today. And it's like, that's like,
do we not do
Mike
that?
Face,
it's honestly more often that we're like, that's Walt Clyde Frazier, but in a JCS movie. Since then, he's been in a film called Adopt a Highway,
which he directed. And I saw it South by Southwest, and it was good.
He was in How It Ends, Intrusion, Redeeming Love, The Listener, Lou, and Reverse the Curse. Which of those is your favorite in the last 7 years for Logan Marshall Green?
I gotta admit, those are 7 movies that look like they're the in-development movies on someone's IMDb. Like,
tough.
I don't remember those coming out.
Are you up on the TV series Big Sky?
Yes.
There was 1 season of this show created by David E. Kelly.
Yeah, it's basically network TV in Yellowstone.
He is 14th on the list here of actors on this series.
Well,
it's not ideal.
It's not about the call sheet. It's about your contribution.
Okay. I want better things for him, but he's great. Nice to see his face pop up in this movie. Pretty solid.
I enjoyed myself.
For Netflix?
Also, I gotta say, man, I was just talking about this with Greenwald on the 10 best episodes list of TV on the watch, about like where TV is at as far as like a thing that you'll reliably at a social occasion, people will be like, we've all watched the exact same show at the exact same time. Everybody at Saturday night holiday parties this weekend was like, I have already watched Carry On.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this was a notably horrendous release weekend in theaters.
Yeah,
Obviously,
Craven down bad.
Craven was horrible. The Lord of the Rings animated movie was a big nothing. And so I think there was a hunger for something like this. And it's also, people are shopping and they got parties and they're tired. They don't have time to make 4 hours for the movies. Yeah. This is perfect. Between this and Rebel Ridge, did Netflix release the 2 best thrillers of 2024?
Yes.
I mean, it's not. This isn't Red Rooms. It's not like a psychological exploration of perversity.
It's not Strange Darlings where I'm like, wow, we've been introduced to a new auteur.
But this kind of movie, which we like, which we talk about on the rewatchables all the time.
Yeah.
Good job by them.
A Dumpuary movie in December.
Chris, where can we hear you?
On The Watch.
Okay.
On The Big Picture.
Mm-hmm.
On the Timothy Chalamet episode of Thea Vaughn that just came out.
Interesting. What were you providing on that app?
Political context.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. That's CR. Mallory Rubin is here, back on the show. You've been an avid participant in The Big Picture in the last 4 weeks. How are you feeling?
spoiled, and like I'm going to go through withdrawal when Dobbins comes back, and you don't need me anymore.
What do you mean need?
Great.
I always need you. You're an essential part of my life. Don't say that.
Thanks, buddy. That's really nice. It's been genuinely fun for me to have so many opportunities to talk to you about the movies and also the Mets.
The Mets are doing great. Yeah, the Mets are doing great. We have a very fun episode upcoming about the film A Complete Unknown. But as a tease, I wanted you to come in and talk about cinema one more time. We're talking about underappreciated, underseen, under whatever movies of the year. And speaking of things that are essential to your life, you are a cat person. You are the cat person.
I love cats. I love my cat. I was hoping, given the subject matter of today's segment, that Halo, the most important person in my life, who is my cat, to be clear, would join me. He was in here 4.5 minutes ago. And then he went and sat on a really warm pile of laundry that Adam took out of the dryer. And then I had to shut the door for sound buffering. And so he is not here. But he's here with me in spirit, as always.
So the film that, I don't know, we have chosen, you have chosen, you were interested in seeing this movie and you did the real work of going out to the cinema to see the film. What is the movie? What'd you pick?
Flow.
Okay, what is Flow?
This
Explain it.
Is an 85-minute animated film about a cat and his animal companions who go on the adventure of a lifetime after a flood decimates their home. It is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And I have still not recovered from seeing this movie, which I did last night because I know this is underseen / underappreciated. And so I just want to note that I am going to go on the underseen lane here because this is not an underappreciated movie. Everyone who has seen this movie, I think, agrees that it is a masterpiece, right? An absolute classic. It's amassing awards, amassing hardware. The lemur in the movie would then collect the hardware and play with it if he got the opportunity. But I think we both really were excited to just encourage anybody who loves movies to see this film if they get the chance. It's on very few screens. Like when I looked for showtimes to see it, I was pretty limited in my options, and we live in Los Angeles, right? So I don't know how easy it will be for people elsewhere to go see the movie, but definitely it was like playing in a few spots every day. And I went to see this last night. The theater was sold out. Every single seat was full. Yeah. And it was amazing. And let me tell you something. Every single person there was an adult. Every person. There was not one child. I'm sure children would love it. I would probably not emotionally recover if I saw this as a child. I'm not sure I will emotionally recover from having seen it as an adult. But the trailers were all for like Sonic 3 and Dogman, etc.
Yeah. I just bought some Dogman gear for my nephew Jack actually for Christmas. Hope he's not listening to this episode. He's
great
6,
stuff.
So he's definitely not listening, I hope.
I'm not familiar with the Dogman IP, but after seeing the trailer once, I did have some thoughts on if you were going to create a mashup of a dog and a man. Is that the half of each you'd use? I don't know.
The head and the hands?
I think I'll just save my full commentary until I get to consume the entire experience.
Well, next time you come back on the show for the Dogman episode, of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Top 5 dogs.
Sean, Flow was a masterpiece. I loved it. I thought it was honestly like just awe-inspiring. What did you think of Flow?
Yeah, I saw it last week, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is the most Mal movie that's ever existed. So I'm really happy to hear that you wanted to go see it and loved it so much. It comes from a filmmaker named Glintz Zibalodis, who is a Latvian filmmaker. As you said, this movie has been hugely critically acclaimed. It's won a bunch of Best Animated Feature Critics Prizes in the last couple of months. It was just added to the shortlist for the Academy Awards for Best Animated Feature. I'll be shocked if it's not nominated for Best Animated Feature. I think it's probably the stiffest competition for The Wild Robot for Best Animated Feature this year.
Yeah.
As you said, it's very brief, very beautiful. It uses a very interesting computer animation technology. The style of animation, there's an almost surreal quality where it feels like one part like the flying toaster screensaver, this sort of like false 3D, and that sense that there's also like a human creating it. It doesn't feel like AI animation or anything like that. It's not, it has rough edges. It's not sanded down and smooth the way your classic Pixar computer generated animation might be. So it looks and feels different. And then the other thing is there's this incredible attention paid to and you can speak to this as a cat lover and cat partner. This is how animals move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it is like zoologically accurate in a way that is very immersive in the story, despite the fact that there is no dialogue in this movie whatsoever.
Not a word. Yeah.
So that might be a challenge for some. I'm very curious to show this to my daughter and see if she will respond. A movie with no dialogue. This would be our entry point into silent cinema ultimately. But I really liked it. I think it's excellent and beautiful. And it's usually when a movie like this comes out, it's a little like overrated. And I think this one is properly rated. It's damn good.
Oh, yeah. So on the animation style front, I thought this was, I mean, even just watching the trailer, you get a pretty good feel for that blend of styles that you're highlighting. But I thought this was just absolutely sublime, like really, really, really exquisite. And that contrast between the way that the creatures, the critters, our heroes, our characters are rendered and the environments around them. When the northern lights kick in, I mean, it's astonishing. But like the water, right? This is, again, the flood is the impetus for the story, right? And the water is quite literally carrying Cat and his fellows through this journey of not only self-preservation, but discovery, like learning to rely on each other, learning to trust each other, learning to take new chances, try new things, gain comfort with things that previously felt threatening or unfamiliar. There are a lot of lessons to take from Flow. Water is so famously, infamously hard to convey in animated films, in video games, right? Anything. And it was so beautiful. It was just so beautiful. The way the light played on the water, the way that the water serves as both a literal and a metaphorical source of reflection and consideration, the way that Cat routinely finds himself in the water, whether that is a moment of dire peril or a moment of newfound confidence to fish. Like, if it doesn't look as good as it does, then it's just not going to be as immersive of a primary setting for the film, but it is. The other primary setting, of course, is this boat, right, that our creatures are traveling along. And you said like silent, but I would say this is not a silent movie. It's just a movie without words.
Right.
It is full of language. It's the language of how animals communicate with each other. And this is going to make me sound insane, but I think you invited me here to talk about the movie knowing that things like this would happen. That was one of the things I genuinely found like breathtaking about it. I have found myself more than once on Ringer Pods when talking about Star Wars and the most successful droids saying something like, well, it's not just a beep and a boop, right? It reminds me of the way that I feel like I can carry on complete, fully realized conversations with my cat Halo that are frankly often more satisfying than conversations I can have with other people. Super normal thing to say out loud on a podcast. There are no human words uttered, but there don't need to be. Like the way that we are able to understand what Cat is contemplating and confronting, the way that we are able to watch the bonds develop between the characters, navigate threats and uncertainty was incredible. And like they have chasms between them that they need to learn to bridge. And so like we as the audience come to learn how to communicate with them as they learn to communicate with each other in a way that really I thought was like exceptionally presented to us. Really just very compelling to watch. And then the other thing, and like, the filmmakers like used, I was just reading about this, actual animal sounds, right? Like these aren't, again, computers. They have microphone recordings of cats meowing and like you can really tell. But the sound beyond that was, I thought, so riveting and how it pulled you deep into the world. The rustling of the leaves that makes the hair stand up on the back of the animals and makes our hearts start to race. We know something terrible is about to happen. The pounding of the hooves, right? Oh God, the threat is mounting. What is about to unfold? And like, even though you know, because you've seen the trailer and you know what the movie is about, your terror just spikes. The surge of the waves, like the sound the whale makes when he crests the edge of the water. My single favorite sound treatment in the entire film, without question, is the sound of Cat's claws every time he's like scrabbling along the deck of the ship or climbing up the side. It's just like those little details that make it feel so fully brought to life. It was beautiful.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I'm not surprised that you did. To your point about the water,
Yeah.
I've just seen Mufasa: The
Mhm.
Lion King, the new film by Barry Jenkins, and these
Yeah.
two movies, which are both about cats, would be an interesting double feature because Mufasa I felt was less successful than Flow, even though it is rendered computer animation that is attempting to put us in the psychological and emotional mindset of a cat in peril. And there are a couple of significant sequences in which a flood threatens the characters in Mufasa, which is the same inciting incident in Flow. And the movies are so oddly similar. And there's a big, conclusive, meaningful moment in the water, which is so hard to render, as you say, in Mufasa, just like in Flow. And one is one of the biggest and most important movies at the most legendary movie studio that we have. And the other is just from this guy in Latvia.
Yeah.
And Flow is, frankly, a bigger and better movie. And that's just fascinating. It's like an incredible example of the way that scope is not everything, that subtle strategy and emotional insight and craft can elevate despite budget, despite where the film is being made or anything else. So I think it's a pretty special little movie.
I have not seen Mufasa, so I can't comment on the particulars, but something that strikes me listening to you make that comparison is like Mufasa is born out of a moment in time culturally where like everything is IP, everything is, could this be a spinoff or an origin story? Could we do a prequel? Could we make more? How can we mine this thing that people have loved for some time? When I was a kid, The Lion King was one of my favorite movies. It was very important to me. I went to bed with like a Simba, like stuffed animal that I held every night, right? That is born out of, and again, I haven't seen it, so I can't comment on the quality, but that is born out of this need, of course, or desire to make money and make content, of course, but also this compulsion in the streaming era and the IP content machine era to explain everything, right? What is the origin story of Scar and Mufasa? How did they come to be at odds, etc.? Flow is the idea of explanation is anathema to the entire pursuit of flow. We never really get answers to any questions. We don't totally even know what the questions are. I won't go into too many details because I don't think we want to spoil it in an episode like this, but just broadly in terms of almost more the premise and the eventual like elements of the plot that unfold, there are no people in the movie. We don't know why. Did they just evacuate because they knew that this flood was coming? Or has there been a prior extinction level event?
Yeah, is it a post-apocalyptic movie? I know, I thought that too.
We don't know, right? We go through we open in our setting with a home and Cat is on a bed and the window's broken. And then we see these statues and you see the piece of paper and you're like, well, that seems pretty recent. How long would a piece of paper or a drawing sit there? But then when Cat is scaling the statues, they're like covered in moss. So you have the ability to let your mind run free, wondering, and you don't know. I will not explain specifically what this sequence is, but there is a moment about 3/4 of the way through the film, maybe even a little further, where something that I can only describe as like supernatural and almost like religious happens, like a mystical event, right? But is it? There could be a different reading of that entirely and a different explanation of that entirely. And the movie is really not interested in trying to ensure that you leave it with one reading. It's there for you to take in and consider and think about the nature of like life and experience and connection. And that's pretty rare these days, actually, in the stories that we get. So I found that to be so, my compulsion is to like leave and think about lore and references and the coaching tree of pop culture connections that lead to a thing. And I was like, oh, well, what would I Google X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, I don't know. I just kind of want to like luxuriate in the feeling of thinking about how amazing that was. And so that was one of the things that I really loved most about it. It was also so stressful though. Like I thought it was beautiful and very actually uplifting and affirming and gave me a lot to think about, but my heart was racing the entire time and I was anxious and concerned to see these characters who I had fallen in love with so quickly, Kat most of all, in constant peril. Like, I was sitting next to a person I did not know, and I almost turned to him and said, "Can I hold your hand?" Now, I managed not to, and I was proud that I was able to exercise that level of restraint. But like, boy, when I got home after, I was still feeling the anxiety of what I had just witnessed. And so I think that's really like it's a testament to the film's impact as well, that it made me feel so keenly in such a short span of time. Just genuinely impressive.
It's a great recommendation and a very eloquent, emotional clarification on how it impacted you. I'm really not surprised, but I'm very happy that you dug it. And I'm glad it pulled you out of the mire of fandom for a brief moment before you had to return to the trenches.
I love fandom as well. I just did a pod on Craven and Flo back to back, two of the great installments, the 2024 cinematic landscape.
Two great cats, right?
There you go. Yeah.
Mallory, Rubin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're here with Charles Holmes.
Yo, what's going on?
Midnight boy par excellence.
Pew pew.
What else are you? How else do you define yourself these days? You're a cinephile? A cineast?
Whoa. The LA film bros have fucking gotten to me.
They wrap their arms around you. You're
Yo.
a brutal boy?
Bro, I got my tickets 70.
When are you going?
21st. I cannot wait.
I'm very happy for you.
It's
Where are you going? What theater? City Walk? Where is
No,
it playing?
I forget. It was Ameritech. What? Cinematheque?
Oh, American Cinematheque.
America Cinematheque. I think I'm going. I think I'm going there. That's going to be my first time going there.
Oh, good for you.
I'm very, very excited. I'm getting into the rep screenings. You know what I'm saying? Chris Ryan is not going to be happy to hear this, but my TV watching has plummeted this year.
Yeah, it's garbage.
I just throw like a movie on in the morning, at night, and I feel so just the high I get from finishing just a movie and bathing in it is so rewarding.
Yeah.
And then the feeling that I have after I watch like I spent 8 hours on a TV show, I'm just like, I'm gonna die one day, and I just finished The Penguin.
You're buttering me up like a toasted bagel right now. This is just
Folks,
incredible stuff.
We got him.
Yeah, I feel like Donald Rumsfeld right now.
But
we
also, I will
locked
say,
in.
I'm 32 now, and I do think that this is the age where I'm just like, I had a summer being a slut out here, and I'm just like, I feel way better just parking my ass in a fucking movie theater, getting a popcorn, subpoena M&Ms, a beer.
Can I tell you something? I'm having a huge comeback with popcorn. I was out on popcorn for like a decade, and I've now had popcorn 3 consecutive movie-going experiences. First of all, I'm pretty much focusing on sweet popcorn now. So caramel popcorn, obviously you can find that in your local AMC. But I got it put onto churro popcorn at the Alamo, which is fire. For all of you out there, Alamo, it's up and down. It's not always a great experience. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Churro popcorn is money. I needed to say that somewhere.
But here's the thing. Churro popcorn sounds amazing, but I think it robs of the experience where I like the salty and then I like the sweet. Mm-hmm. If I'm getting all the sweet just in one package, I feel like I'm kind of robbing myself.
So you like to have a popcorn and a candy?
Yeah, and I don't like to dump. Everybody does the dump.
No,
I'm just like, I'm going to have some popcorn. And I heard you talking. Here's the thing. Now that I'm going to these rep screenings, I'm a lot more conscientious. I'm like, motherfucker, I'm finishing this popcorn before the shit starts.
Yeah.
I don't want the chewing. We're all here.
It's like having a meal before the movie.
Yes.
It's like you went out to dinner, but it's just a bag of popcorn. Like, that's the movie. We don't want to disrupt everyone's movie watching experience.
I will say HR does not need to hear about this. My first Vidiots experience was with my manager, my beloved Justin Sales. Can you guess what we saw with him and his partner?
I don't even want to guess. What was it?
Y tu
Mama También?
También, yes. Amazing experience, but I'm sitting next to Justin.
So 2 men and 1 woman watched Y tu Mama También together. Interesting.
Yes, it was
very cool.
Great. We got, and then my high was blown because we got vegan food next door, and we're like, oh, what are they playing on the TV? And it was the fucking Tyson Paul fight,
Paul.
And I was just like, wow, I went from seeing one of the greatest masterpieces ever to the end of something artistic.
That is brutal. Well, okay, so I've asked you here to tell me about a movie. Now, this is not a movie that you picked that came out in a movie theater. This is a streaming film for us in the United States. What movie did you pick?
Shadow Strays.
Speak on it.
All right. Directed by Timo
Jajanto.
Sorry, I didn't want to butcher his name.
Yeah, Indonesian filmmaker. And I think something that I grew up on, weirdly, was martial arts films. My uncle is very, very into martial arts, Tai Chi. You know, there was a summer where it was like, when I say like into it, like his hands, like he could kill you with his hands. He's like, yeah, one time I did this training where we would go out into the woods. I'm like, oh, what did you go out into the woods? He's like, we scratched tree bark. And I'm like, what do you mean you scratched tree bark? And he's just like, yeah, it's a training thing where you just take the tree barks and you look at his hands. So he was trying to teach me martial arts. Your uncle was Wolverine?
Basically. And what he would do, like one of the treats we would have after he would like make us bike for like 5 miles and like sweep the boardwalk like fucking Mr. Miyagi, is we would go back to his like house and it would be like Shaw Brothers movies or it'd be like martial arts movies. Like, all right, now watch this. And The Shadow Strays like itched that for me. Like every couple like weeks or months, I'd just go to a martial arts movie just to like feel like that warmth again. And this is not a perfect movie. I think this filmmaker sometimes tends to be a little bit bloated, but the action in this is fucking incredible.
So this movie came out somewhat quietly in the fall.
Yes.
I think if you're a martial arts head, a hardcore action head, you're aware of it. Timo has made several films in Indonesia and in Asia. He probably is best known in the US for his installments in the VHS series. There's one in particular in VHS 2 that is absolutely amazing and that I loved so much that I wrote about it as like a standalone piece for Grantland, I want to say in 2014. It's really, really great. The name of it is escaping me right now, but it's in VHS 2. It's by far the best segment in that film. But he like really bridges the gap between horror and martial arts filmmaker, and he has like a very visceral filmmaking style. And is very comfortably situated, I think, in like the John Wick era of action movie making. Would you agree with that?
Well, I also think he is like that next generation of, because like a lot of the same actors, like for something American audiences know, The Raid, like he is the kind of the next generation of that.
He's worked with Iko Uwais from those movies and his other films, yeah.
And he said something kind of interesting in a lot of his interviews with The Shadow Strays, and this is why I like him so much as a director, is I think that so much of American action has kind of been neutered just by the superhero of it all, where Timo is like, I want you to feel the violence in my movie. When someone gets stabbed in his, like, he's not doing that thing where the camera's panning away. It's like when someone is shot, if someone gets their arm cut off, it lingers. And it's like, he has the type of movies where I'm like, sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm glad this movie's almost over. And then I check and we still have an hour left just because I'm just like, the whole time I'm like,
yes,
because the action is just so heavy.
It's like it is the theater of escalation throughout the whole movie. Yeah. But like in the first 5 minutes of this movie, there is like a raid on, I guess it's almost like a Japanese community, and a guy gets his head cut off. He gets decapitated. And the head like hangs from the back of the neck, and he stays standing for like 30 seconds, and the camera lingers on the head wound and the open neck. And that's what I say when I say like it's action and it's horror, because there's like a real interest in the bodily destruction that goes into action filmmaking. This is a really cool movie. It's way too long. It's 2.5 hours, and it feels it when you're watching it. But the sequences are each crazier than the next and done really, really, like if you like this kind of thing, it is excellent.
Yeah, so this is a perfect 3.5 movie for me. And that's not shade at, like, this is like actually my favorite martial arts movies tend to kind of like get into that zone where I'm like, this is a movie about the sequences. There's one, I think it's the best of the entire film, where our main character, 13, she's an assassin, and they're on the second floor of a club. And she basically is like beating up this jobber, and the camera follows them as they fall out of the window, and it hit, and I'm just like, it was that meme where I was like, wait, what? And I like had forward. I was like, what happened? And I think even though this movie there's a lot of that, it's way too long. There's so many of those little moments as like a martial arts head, as an action fan, where I just want to see more from this filmmaker. I think this is his second Netflix film after, I think the other one was The Night Comes.
I think it comes at night. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's one of those movies. That is an amazing movie as well. And that was made before this. And you can even tell just how much he's grown just from that in terms of just like staging everything. That's another fantastic movie.
It was The Night Comes for Us.
The Night Comes for Us. And I want to, he's directing Nobody 2 with Odenkirk next. I want more American directors to have this feeling in their action movies where it does not always have to be this intense. It doesn't have to be that bloody, but you don't need a bunch of fucking CGI bullshit. Sometimes it is just 2 or 3 people hand to hand and just being like, what can I show them that is just gonna.
I think he has a really good handle on blending the digital and CGI filmmaking styles for the right set pieces without an over-reliance on it and doing a lot of practical stuff. But the other thing that I think about when I watch his movies is this is a guy who was raised on first-person shooters. Like, video games are an intrinsic part of his movie-making experience. I don't remember, are you a gamer? Do you play video games?
I do play video games, but I'm not button mash level. You know?
Okay. Yeah, because I feel like if you were raised on first-person shooters, not that every shot in his movies is first-person POV, but that sensation that you get, that sort of like rattle and shake and move when you get impact on a sequence, it really fits there. It's a great recommendation. I feel like this movie was completely unremarked upon on this show all year, so it's a great pick. You had a couple of others that were on your list.
Yeah, I just wanted to do some like honorable mentions. I've honestly I've written about it, just a blurb. I've talked about it on Ringerverse weirdly, but one of them was Rap World. Came out of nowhere. Most famous person in it, Connor O'Malley. How would you even describe this movie?
It's like a found footage horror movie for white kids who were into rap in 2008.
Yes.
Like, i.e. me. It's like about a bunch of suburban guys who are aspiring rappers in Tobyhanna in Pennsylvania.
It's an hour long. It's free. You can go watch it.
On YouTube.
On YouTube. And for the first 5 minutes, I'm like, what the fuck is this? I'm about to turn this shit off. And it weirdly does a thing. Both of us are recovering music journalists. I think most movies about music are honestly terrible. And I think this one weirdly felt so accurate to what it felt like to be in high school at this moment. This type of like, I knew the white boys who are way too into rap, who think that they are going to be the next sensation. The jokes are incredible. And it's like, the bit at first is annoying. You're like, they can't sustain this bit for an hour. And then I don't know what happened. Like 10 minutes, 15 minutes into the movie, I'm like, okay, this bit is incredible.
It's the same thing with every Connor O'Malley piece, every YouTube short, every bit, every talk show appearance. There's an unbelievable talk show appearance on Seth Meyers that he made earlier this year. This is so great because he used to work with Seth. This is true of Stand Up Solutions, the stand-up hour that he put out earlier this year that's also on YouTube. This movie that he co-directed with Danny Sherrar is... in the first 10 minutes, you're like, God, this is like hilarious, but also deeply insufferable. Yes. And then when you get into the second 10 minutes, when it doubles down fully on the bit, you're like, this is the most fearless thing I've ever seen. These guys are so overcommitted to this insanely dumb idea, and they never break stride. They never, ever wink at the camera. They never turn to you and be like, isn't this so funny that we're doing this? They lock in on that very stupid idea and see it all the way through. It is like, there is a part of Rap World that is eerily documentary. Like, it's like you're watching a fucking Maisels movie about losers in high school trying to be rappers. It feels so close, and yet it is also made by a bunch of guys who are in their 30s. But I'm with you. I loved this. I shouted this out, I think, at the halfway mark of the year, something I loved, and even did a screening of the movie at the American Cinematheque in Los Feliz with Connor and Danny and Harris and a bunch of the other guys who worked on the movie. Great pick. Okay, what's your third one?
And my third and last one, I don't think you've seen this one yet, but it is Miyazaki and the Heron. Basically, pretty much for most of Miyazaki's films, come with a documentary about how it was made. And I picked this one because I think I love process films. Like, if you look at my Letterboxd 4, they're all process films. And this one to me was so special because you really never get to see this, where you have a legendary director towards the end of his life, and the entire documentary is essentially, you get to see the moments when like animation luminaries are just dying left and right. And we understand Miyazaki, the character, as a very like curmudgeon and just very like he makes these sweet movies and you're just like, you're always in a bad mood. And there are moments in this movie where you just kind of see him broken. You see the thing Bobby was talking about, like Scorsese's gotten to this point where you're a legend, but you're seeing you're outliving everyone. And it just touched me so profoundly. It made me enjoy his last movie, The Boy and the Heron, even more because you realize you're just like, oh, it's not that Miyazaki is a curmudgeon, or he is, or it's not that he's super nice. It's like he feels too much. Like the funniest part of the film is there's some land. This is how rich Miyazaki is. He looks outside and there's some land development free. He's like, I'm going to buy it to set up a soccer place where the local kids can play.
Okay.
And the whole thing going throughout the movie is he buys it, he builds it, none of the kids want to play on it. And I'm just like, you're making a whole fucking movie. Why do you care about? And he keeps looking out the window, be like, when are the kids going to play? And you're just like, why do you care about this, Miyazaki? You're a legend. And then there's a moment in the film where the first few kids start playing on it, and you've just seen all these people die throughout the course of making this movie.
Oh my God.
And just like the look on his face being like, it was worth it. And I was just like, oh, I wish I got this type of documentary for all of my favorite directors.
That's amazing. And also, I don't think this is spoiling anything by saying that, but that makes it an amazing companion with The Brutalist. When you see The Brutalist, you'll know exactly what I mean. I'm not giving anything away, but that very idea of wanting to build something for people, but maybe it's also for yourself.
Yeah.
Ties that neatly in there. 3 great recommendations, Charles. Thank you so much.
Yo, thank you for having me. And next year, hopefully, I can be welcomed by your people.
You are already welcomed, but you will be even deeper in the club the more rep screenings you go to. Thanks, Charles. Yasi Salek is here, making her triumphant return after a debut that will live in infamy. How will it live?
I mean, it's not up to me to decide how I was perceived, Sean. I mean, I heard some rumblings that were positive.
Rumblings where?
On the internet, the interweb.
Checking it out, huh? Checking out
I'll
the
tell
feedback?
I'll tell you what. I saw one person say that I was the Aubrey Plaza of the Ringer, and all other comments died away into the background. And I don't care what anyone else says ever again because that really put some wind in my sails.
Well, as you know,
I had a nice time.
I love Aubrey Plaza, and I'm so happy to have you back. And if you are the Aubrey of this pod, that's very, very exciting to me. Today, I gave you really more of an assignment. Most people that came to this episode said, God, here's a movie I love that I feel like a lot of people didn't see, and I wanted to rep for it. It's on a streaming service, or it got very minor distribution. But I know you pretty well, and we're about the exact same age, and our tastes converge in intriguing ways. And I saw this movie, Y2K.
Correct.
Which is co-written and directed by Kyle Mooney. And the only person I could think of was you. So can you explain what Y2K is and maybe why you think I wanted you to see it?
The film, or like what happened in the turn of the new year of the year 2000?
Well, maybe you should explain the latter to explain the former.
Okay, sure. Before the clock struck midnight on January 31st, 1999, there was a great panic that somehow, I mean, I might be misremembering this because, again, we're around the same age, so I was like 17 or something, that all of the machines would go haywire and mass chaos would ensue in society. It didn't happen.
That's more or less what was suggested.
Yeah. And then the film, honestly, clever premise that it's like a high school, can't hardly wait / American Pie-esque sort of high school. It's a New Year's Eve. We're going to make the best of it. Let's go out here, 2 kind of dorky best friends, of course, in pursuit of a girl, and they go to the cool New Year's Eve party on the eve of Y2K. And then it turns into a horror film because the machines do go haywire.
Yeah, it's what if Y2K actually happened. And not only
Right.
happened, but happened in the most dramatic and violent fashion imaginable. But the movie comes from Kyle Mooney, who most people
Yes,
will
we love
recognize
him.
for his work on Saturday Night Live. In my opinion, one of the best cast members of Saturday Night Live of the last 15 years. Somebody who brought like the kind of oddball sensibility and the 10-to-1 style sketches that I always really appreciated. He got his start on YouTube, doing a lot of great sketch comedy.
Yeah, he's so funny. He's giving Jim Brewer almost like in that like that part of the cast where like, oh, this guy's so weird.
Yeah,
but in the coolest way.
And actually, his character Garrett, a video store clerk in this movie, is kind of giving a little bit of Jim Brewer in Half Baked.
Yeah, totally. Maybe that's why I thought of it. In my opinion, he was the best part of the movie. His character.
Yeah. So the movie is like a little rickety, right? Like it's there's some funny parts, there's some very violent horror parts. It feels like a very loving homage at times to more like 80s sci-fi, like explorers, Goonies style team up movies. Plus, you mentioned it's like Can't Hardly Wait. And it's the cinematography is by Bill Pope, who shot The Matrix and Clueless and all the Edgar Wright movies, like a legend in cinematography.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So he's there for some of the cool like action set pieces. But the movie is a little like, this is a first time director, and you can tell. It's not bad. It's not great. It's very, very flawed.
I feel like I really enjoyed the first 25%, whatever, like the greatest, where they really pound in the greatest hits to remind you what this era was like. And at first I was like, is this too much? And I was like, no, this is great. Do it all. Like ping, 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 ping. Like every song cue, every slang, like pointing out the raver, like everything. And again, we're the same age. So all of it was very familiar to me. I was like, that's on point. And I guess Kyle Mooney must be around our age too.
I believe he's 41. And so this is specifically what I wanted to speak to you about. Because when the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie came out last year called Mutant Mayhem, do you remember this? Are you familiar with this?
That didn't happen in my universe.
Okay,
no.
in my universe it did happen. And it happened profoundly. It hit like a bomb. It was written by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg.
Oh man, I can't believe I missed this.
Yeah, it's an animated movie. And it very much is a movie for kids. But it's a movie for kids written by a couple of guys who grew up with TMNT who were in their early 40s.
As did you.
We both did. And all of the references in that movie, all of the needle drops, all of the jokes feel like they're made for people who are in their 40s. When that movie came out, I was like, this is so crazy to be living in the time where the people who are my age now have the power, or quote unquote power, to get their own dumb dreams made in Hollywood. And those dreams are just full of references to what it was like to be 9, or in the case of Y2K, 17 in these very particular times. So watching Y2K, I mean, there's a long list of songs that are used in the movie, all of which I'm sure resonated.
What hit you the
hardest?
What hit you the hardest?
It's a really good question. I'll say that Praise You by Fatboy Slim comes in very early in the film.
Yes.
And I have to assume that Fatboy Slim is a really had to be there thing. Like, I don't know. If you're 16, I don't know what you make of Y2K, because some of the jokes are so specific. But
so specific.
But You've Come a Long Way, Baby, the Fatboy Slim album, was a legit phenomenon when it came out.
The music videos alone.
It
The
was huge on
Delamo
MTV.
Mall, Spike Jonze, Flash Mob, major.
So that
Christopher Walken, right? That one?
that was I think the next album, right?
The next album, okay.
I don't know what hit you hard.
Randomly Flagpole Sitta by Harvey Danger, even though that's a 1997 song, but it would have been playing pretty regularly in 1999. That one, I was like, let's fucking go. Also, I did make some notes during the film, which was totally fine, because when you go see a 12:45 p.m. showing of Y2K on a Monday at the Americana, in Glendale, not a lot of people there. The Chumbawamba through line, maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe I'm intellectualizing something that doesn't need to be intellectualized. But I was like, okay, like I don't know if it was intentional, but I was like, Chumbawamba famously maybe not famously, actually, sort of, not many people maybe know that, but are an anarcho-punk band that like donated all the money from the sales of that massive song that everyone thought was just sort of like a one-hit wonder. And then I was like, okay, internet was kind of at first like an anarchic type tool, right? We'll become ungovernable, which then became very co-opted by capitalism and became evil. And I was like, I wonder if this is like on purpose. But again, perhaps I'm over intellectualizing the music choice of Chumbawamba.
Do you have a similar pointy-headed theory about the usage of Mandy Moore's Candy in this film?
No, I'm so sorry. I don't know. I can't make that work here, I don't think.
One thing that the movie does really well is that it identifies the, at least in the 90s, inherently cliquish nature of high school friendships.
Totally.
And, you know, movies like Can't Hardly Wait do a good job of this. The Breakfast Club is entirely oriented around plucking one individual from those groups out and putting them together.
Clueless has the best montage of that. Yeah. The stoners sit on that grassy knoll. Like, there's the Persians. They drive the BMWs.
But this movie does a cool thing where it like picks people out almost based on their music taste. You know, there's like the burnouts who are really into Korn and the Family Values tour. There's the underground hip hop kid. I will just say I felt
so triggering for me, that person.
I felt deeply attacked by that character.
Same. I was like, I knew that guy and he was so annoying. The Prophets of Intuition or whatever that was actually so perfect that I was like, oh, Kyle Mooney, one of us. Kyle Mooney backpack rap. Kyle Mooney for sure has like Freestyle Fellowship on vinyl, like Soul Assassins. Like he was there.
I think he's from San Diego too, so it makes sense that he would be into that Bay Area stuff. And, you know, the Swing Kids, I thought was a very funny joke with the Brian Setzer Orchestra needle drop. That was so funny.
That one I love, especially because I did little reveal. I can share it. It's been long enough. The statute of limitations up. I did have a little dalliance with a swing dancing in high school. Can you believe? I know. That's right. Swingers was a really big movie. I think you know that here on The Big Picture. And it changed a lot of people briefly. Although after 2 months, I was like, no, this is not for me. Thank you.
What would you do? Would you go to the Brown Derby? What would you do?
Well, I was in Singapore, so
you were swing dancing in Singapore.
It's a global phenomenon, Sean.
You are a one of one, I must say. I've
lived a lot of lives. I want you to, but more, I was the girl where they were like, she has holes in her brains now. That was more me. That was like, I didn't dress like that, but that was absolutely me. I was like, oh yeah, what's up, girl? That's me.
Okay, this is an important thing to discuss then, because a significant figure in this movie, not just metaphorically or spiritually, but literally, is Fred Durst. Yes. Fred Durst appears in the film. I thought pretty humorously. And I
thought he did a great job.
This is not the first A24 movie he's in this year. You know, he was also in I Saw the TV Glow. Did you see that movie?
I didn't see it, but I remember like a big deal when he was announced that he was going to be in it.
He's got a very small part in that movie. He's got a weirdly critical role in this movie.
Yeah.
Do you think Limp Bizkit should be reclaimed?
By whom?
The masses, the youths, anyone.
No.
What did you think of Limp Bizkit when you were 16?
It wasn't my thing. I was a Korn girl. I was a System of a Down and Korn Deftones, but Limp Bizkit didn't totally speak to me. Limp Bizkit, I feel, in a way catered to like a slightly different market. Because famously, Limp Bizkit is Midwestern, right? Aren't they Detroit?
I thought Florida.
Oh, Florida. That checks out too. Yeah. Whatever it was not California. And I feel like I couldn't really connect with it. Speaking of, where is this film set? It's the East Coast, right?
That's an excellent question.
It definitely is, because there's Utz chips in the liquor store scene, and we don't have Utz chips on the West Coast, or I don't think in the Midwest. I'm a chip connoisseur.
Well, it was filmed in New Jersey.
Did it feel more like your hometown of growing up area?
I mean, part of the reason why I wanted to talk to somebody about this movie is, even with its flaws, I'm like, God damn, they just got so much right. It's just so accurate to the experience. You know, not that there was like any one character who I related to, or any one group, or even any one song.
The Prophets of Intuition was the one that you...
Which one?
The Prophet of Intuition was the guy that you resonated.
I mean, there is a part of me that was like that guy, you know?
What about the part where the popular, beautiful girl was like, and nobody said anything about this. This to me was the most horror part of the whole movie, was when she was like, I don't really like music.
Yeah.
Nobody said anything. Nobody was like, okay, sociopath. I don't really like music.
That was strange. That girl is played by Rachel Zegler.
She's very famous now, right? She's Snow White. I saw her on the poster on my way out, and I was like, wow, you had an interesting year.
She is going to be Snow White. She was one of the stars of Steven Spielberg's West Side Story, which is remarkable in that movie. She's a
She
damn
was good
good
in this
actress.
movie.
She's good,
She was
right?
great. Yeah,
She
she's
was
very cute.
She was like the only one who I was like, this person's a star and these other people are not. Did you get that feeling?
Yeah. Well, I thought that shockingly, because you know how I feel about New Zealand. But the Danny character was also had a lot of star power. I was shocked at the decision to kill him off so early because he was such a fun thing to watch and provided so many jokes. And I was like, oh, you kept the prophet of intuition and like the angry Fred Durst girl and you got rid of that guy? That's so weird.
Yeah, that's the actor Julian Dennison, who people will probably recognize from Hunt for the Wilder People or Deadpool 2, where he had a big role.
He was phenomenal, I thought, personally.
The Prophets of Intuition guy, CJ, was played by Daniel Zolgadry, Zolgadry, actually, who's really, really good in, did you see Funny Pages? Movie that came out a couple of years ago. It's directed by Owen Kline, who's Kevin Kline's son. Actually, also an A24 movie. That's the thing, is that this is like a collection of recurring universe. A24 folks. But I don't know. What else? Any other thoughts on Y2K?
I just thought it was, again, I might be intellectualizing too much, but I almost wanted it to be not better is not the right word. And maybe there's no way to make this movie in a not sort of, I'm not a horror movie person in general. And this is like, what would you call this genre of horror where it's like very funny and someone dies and everyone's over it in like a minute and a half, even though that's their like lifetime best friend?
Horror comedy.
But like the timing is actually so interesting, right? Because AI is a almost bigger concern now than it was at Y2K. And I think that's the parts of the movies. Anytime it tried to get sort of like serious about a messaging, I was like,
you know, Yasi, it's funny that you say that because on this very episode, I have an interview with James Cameron about the Terminator and the prescience of that
and
movie.
James Cameron on one episode? It's going to blow out of the water.
Hard to believe that the servers here at Spotify can even contain the levels of charisma that are flowing through this episode, thanks to you and the other guy.
That's what I'm saying. Jimmy Cams.
Jimmy Cams?
That's right.
Okay.
Try it out.
What's the 2024 movie you haven't seen yet that you're most fired up about?
Probably Baby Girl. I'm really excited about.
What do you think happens if I put you on an episode with Amanda? You think it's going to work?
Yeah, well, you are going to leave while me and Amanda do the new Bridget Jones.
Oh, right. Actually, honestly, I would love that. Could we do that? I really need some episodes off, like badly.
100%. And you have to do it or you're a misogynist. So
no one can ever accuse me of that. That's honestly ridiculous. And how dare you?
I said if you don't.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm very excited about Baby Girl. I really do want to see Nosferatu because that's, while I don't, would you call that a horror movie?
Yeah, it's a gothic horror. Yeah.
Okay, you know me, famously a goth. I'll see any vampire movie, but
okay.
So I feel very othered by horror movies. Do you not notice they've gotten extremely popular in the last couple of years? It's like every other movie is a horror movie.
I have noticed that they're one of the most. They had been historically until this year one of the most reliable things at the box office. I think that's why that's happened. Also, those people see me. They see me and they understand me.
Okay. Can I tell you one note I made on my phone that I was kind of proud of?
Sure.
About Y2K and two. One is no one says poser anymore. We need to bring that back. That's the click thing, though. They don't have clicks anymore. Again, to your point, if teens see this, I think they're going to be a little confused.
I agree. There's a lot of confusing words and ideas in this movie.
And then Chekhov's condom.
That was funny.
Thank you.
It was a Durex, as I recall.
I didn't take in the.
I
didn't clock the branding.
No free ads for Durex, by the way. I just noticed it from the film.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Really good insights there.
Thanks for sending me to see Y2K on Monday at 12:45 p.m. Can't wait to see what you come up for me next. Come with me.
I hope you enjoy the Nosferatu Baby Girl double feature on Christmas Day. You're gonna have a great time.
I can't wait. That's going to be a great day for me. Thanks, Sean, for having me. It's always really fun, and I do feel honored to share an episode with Jimmy Cams, my intellectual and creative peer.
It's wonderful having you, and I can't wait to clear out for you and Amanda to make something magical in 2025. Thanks, Yasi. Okay, we're talking about our favorite underseen and underappreciated movies of 2024. I'm here with two of the most hallowed prestige TV podcasters here to talk about films. You're also film podcasters. House of R, Trial by Content, co-host Joanna Robinson, Group Chat,
a lot of film talk,
various and sundry film podcasting, Rob Mahoney. Has this been a year for underrated and underappreciated movies?
It's been a weird movie year.
Definitely.
A very, very patchwork movie year. And going through with this prompt, what's underseen, underappreciated, I couldn't find a lot because I think it was so thin across the board that like there weren't a lot of hidden gems because we were just digging for gems all year long. Wouldn't you say, Sean?
Well,
as the host of The Big Pick?
Someone who talks about movies twice a week, every week, all year. I made a list of my own for this conversation, and it wasn't hard to find a bunch of stuff I didn't get a chance to talk about, but some of the reasons I didn't get a chance to talk about them were strange release dates or international concern, or how do I even get someone to go see a movie that's only playing in 4 screens in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And Discovery is one of my favorite parts of the show, but I think you're right that the thin gruel nature of the calendar left us with a lot of like, hey, maybe I can make an entire episode out of Venom 3. Let's give it a shot, and we did do that. We did do that, which was it a mistake perhaps, but we did do it, and I had a very fun time with Charles and Mallory. Rob, why don't I start with you? Like, is there a movie that you're really excited to recommend here?
I mean, there are many movies I would be excited to recommend.
Okay.
One that I have tried to get people to see that I found myself being an advocate for is Dee Dee, the 125th highest grossing movie domestically this year. Like, nobody showed up but me to see Dee Dee. And I think we're a worse nation for it. I don't know if we'd be in our current predicament if everyone had seen Dee Dee by this point. An amazing coming of age movie. And I will say there may be a bit of a generational divide because this hits me like straight in the strike zone. There is a point at which the main character, Chris's phone goes off and it's playing Hello Goodbye's Touchdown Turnaround as his ringtone. And I'm like, this is locating me in such a precise emotional place. That I was just locked in for the entire movie. I think it's such a beautiful portrayal of a lot of different things. I mean, if you're at all interested in skate culture, especially in the early 2000s, this is a great movie for you. If you're at all interested in mother-son relationships, a very common subject on screen to say the least, but one that I think is articulated really, really beautifully. The Asian American experience, California living more generally, like I think it just hits a lot of really, really good sweet spots in that very like filmmaker makes a sort of autobiographical story way. And you can't replicate and you can't fake that kind of authenticity.
I like this movie a lot. I had Sean Wong on to talk about it, and he was, I think, the second time since I've started doing the show where I've thought to myself, wow, I'm really old. And it's not that I couldn't relate to the framework. It's like roughly 2008, I want to say, is when the movie takes place. And so I was a little bit older at the advent of a lot of this, like the birth of YouTube and like high tension MySpace social culture in high school and in middle school as the character is in the film. But I think Emma Seligman was the other person that I talked to first for Shiva Baby. And I was like, whoa, I can't believe how much old. It's like when you are watching an NBA game, Rob, you'll relate to this clearly. And you're like, everyone on the court is half my age.
Yeah.
And how chilling that feels. And now we're in an era where filmmakers can be 25, 26, 27 and making like profound, thoughtful, good films, winning Sundance prizes, working with major movie stars. But I really like Dee Dee. It's a great recommendation.
Can I ask a follow-up question to you, Rob? You mentioned if one is interested in skate culture. Are you, Rob Mahoney, interested in skate culture?
See, I am the perfect audience for this movie because I want to be interested in skate culture, But much like Dee Dee himself, like I could never skate. And look, a lot of this movie is just about like faking it until not really you make it, but you get found out. Yeah. And what could possibly be more relatable than that as a guy chattering on a podcast?
Back in my day, we used to call you posers.
Wow.
You were a poser.
Wow.
Well, some people call us filmers. Some people call us filmmakers of a different kind.
Joanna, what's your pick?
I am going with Between the Temples. And this is like as indie as they come indie film, starring Jason Schwartzman and Carol Kane in a love story. And it's about a cantor who has sort of lost his faith, his joie de vivre, his
voice.
everything.
Yeah.
and a woman who is interested in converting, and the life that is expected for him and the excitement that she offers, and a beautiful performance by Carol Kane as this, manic pixie dream older woman in his life, and it's a perfect role for her. I love Schwartzman. This is actually a really, really good Schwartzman performance as well. There are some sequences in this film where I was like, is this good? I'm not sure. There's some like extended drug sequences that I have some questions about, but at the heart of it, it's just an incredible connection between and chemistry between two unlikely folks, and also an incredible Dolly De Leon performance
As one of two mothers to
as his
Schwartzman's character.
as his stepmother. Yeah, and she is just like out on this relationship. She is not having it. And if you love her being mean, as a lot of us do, you will enjoy this movie.
What kind of Schwartzman are we getting here?
Okay, give me your Schwartzman spectrum.
I mean, it's a pretty wide berth.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of modes.
We're not doing an Andersonian sort of quirky role. We're doing like sad boy Schwartzman.
A little closer to the Alex Ross Perry, listen up, Philip, but less caustic, more sad.
Yeah.
Okay.
A deeply downtrodden man looking for
meaning,
looking to restore some sense of meaning in his life.
Mm.
There's a sequence at the end of this movie across the dinner table that's incredible.
So good.
If you like the movie, please listen to Nathan Silver and Schwartzman when I interviewed them over the summer about it. Schwartzman, I'll never forget, he walked in to the studio and he was like, look at these cameras. And he was like marveling at the cameras that we have in our studios. And he was like, is that 4K? Wow. And I was like, sir, you are Jason Schwartzman? Like you are a member of the Coppola clan and you are homies with Wes Anderson. I'm sure you've seen a camera before.
Certainly.
Yeah.
But honestly, he was incredibly kind guy and is on an extended streak right now of great performances. He's amazing in Asteroid City. He's so fun in the Spider-Verse movie. Speaking of great vocal performances, I really like both of your picks, guys. Those are great.
Would you say that do both of those movies feel overlooked, underseen?
I'm in the context of box office, without question,
right?
Because you are arbiters of great taste. Of course, I have been all over these movies and have even spoken to the people who made them on the pod. But they're damn good movies, and I'm glad you wanted to bring them. Actually, they both were Sundance 2024 alumni, so maybe they had a little bit more visibility than your average indie movie, but not that much.
I mean, I definitely didn't mean. Have you heard of these movies,
No,
Sean?
no,
Because I knew you did, but I
think they are underappreciated for sure.
And I think I accidentally called this film Between Two Temples when it's Between the Temples, obviously. Okay. Just wanted to.
We'll fix that in post with Jason Schwartzman's camera.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Thank you guys, Rob, Joanna. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Sean.
Okay, Wags is back. Bobby, the floor is yours. What's your underseen, underappreciated pick?
This is a film that I literally have not had one single conversation out loud with anyone about. It's called Good One. It's from writer-director India Donaldson. This is her feature debut. I believe it premiered at Sundance this year, and to some acclaim. I think it won some awards at Sundance. It's the story of a 17-year-old girl in the summer before she goes away for college, who's going on a hiking trip with her father. Her parents are divorced. Her father's friend and his son also traditionally come on this hiking trip with them. The son doesn't want to because his parents have recently gotten divorced and he's upset about that. So she ends up on this hiking trip, this weekend hiking trip to the Catskills, just with her father and her father's friend. And like, not really that much else happens, if I'm being honest. It's one of those movies where the beauty of it really is in the subtlety, and the girl is portrayed by this actor who I believe this is her debut as well, Lily Kalias. The father is portrayed by I think we could call him that guy, James LaGrosse.
Indie film icon James LaGrosse.
Yeah. A wonderful character actor. I think for me, most well known from Certain Women. Another film where kind of not that much happens, but it's all in the beauty of the detail, and they kind of reminded me of each other tonally. But yeah, they go on this hiking trip over the weekend, and I think honestly, what really made it so appealing to me is like I think it was such a great year at the movies for like generational tension. And when you're 17, you really like think you're the shit. You know, you really think you have it figured out and you're about to go and start this great life. And in some ways, you're right. You know what I mean? You really are kind of molding into yourself, and you can see Lily Colias, her character's name is Sam, is like very expertly portraying that feeling of like having way more to say about this, but not thinking that it's worth it. And her and her dad kind of have this somewhat strained relationship because he is a little bit emotionally stunted. And there's a turn about 2/3 of the way through the film that kind of changes the emotional dynamics of it. I don't want to give that away, but it's such an interesting, like, it's just a character piece. And it's refreshing to see those get made still, and a new talent like announce itself both as a writer and director, but also as an actor in Lily Colias. And I don't know, I really liked this movie a lot. What did you think of it?
I liked it a lot too. I think I did mention it coming out of Sundance as a film that I really enjoyed. At the time when I saw it, I did not realize it was that India Donaldson is the director Roger Donaldson's daughter. Roger Donaldson, you may know as the director behind such films as No Way Out, Species, and Cocktail. So,
goddamn, No Way Out. Let's go.
She comes from a fascinating Hollywood family. There was a great piece about her that I read in the LA Times. I can't recall who the journalist was, profiling her, and they talked to Roger and a couple of other people. And, you know, this film has like nothing to do with the cinema Roger Donaldson whatsoever. It is a very quiet, contemplative movie, as you said, Bob. But very, very good. Great performance. I also want to shout out Danny McCarthy, who gives a performance as the friend.
Yes.
Who is a critical figure in the story. And yeah, it's just a damn good debut. It's the kind of debut where like I'm, you know, as Bill would say, season tickets for India's next work.
I completely agree. And I love a movie where a lot is going on underneath the surface. And it's putting you in the pressure cooker of what you know is going on under the surface for the first hour. It's about a 90-minute film. And then at some point, you know there has to be some kind of release valve. And even if it doesn't completely explode and devolve, you know, like Chernobyl or anything, it's like, because that's kind of what life is. You know, you leave stuff under the surface. And at the risk of kind of like oversharing, like the character in this movie felt so, the daughter character in this movie felt so well rendered, because it's like, when you're 17 and you're like kind of smart and clever and stuff, like adults just don't even think about you as a kid anymore. And they put shit on you that they shouldn't put on you. And it's cool to see like an indie debut feature portray that. I found it really great. I liked it a lot.
I think in particular, having lived through this, parents who have gotten divorced, who think that they have grown their kids up by having that emotional experience, then start sharing things with their kids that they never would have within the sanctity of the nuclear family. That think, you know, the feelings become a little bit more stray, and you're more comfortable communicating things that maybe your kids just should never hear. I'm thinking about that exact kind of thing all the time now in a way that I never did before. So yeah, I agree with you. It's a very good recommendation, and a very serious and good movie. Good job, Bob.
Available on VOD, by the way. You can go check it out.
It's that simple. Now. Was it Metrograph? I think Metrograph distributed, right?
It sure was. That's where I saw it.
Nice.
I saw it at like 10 a.m. and then I went home and I didn't talk about it again until right now.
Well, lovely to be chatting with you as always, Bobby. Okay, who's next?
I believe now we have the one and only Amanda Dobbins via voice note.
Wow, Amanda Dobbins. She's back again, sort of. I still have not listened to this voice note, so
neither have I.
Let's see what she's into.
Hello, everyone. It is Amanda, and I am back briefly to talk about one of my favorite movies of the year that I forgot to include on the last voice note. And also, I think one of the most underseen movies of the year, despite it being available on Netflix. It is Martha, the documentary about Martha Stewart, directed by R.J. Cutler, who you might know from the Billie Eilish documentary or from the September issue, which is a great documentary about Vogue and Anna Wintour. And R.J. Cutler seems to be developing a niche as the documentarian of difficult women of a certain age. So the Martha documentary, I have always been more of an Ina Garten fan than a Martha Stewart, or not even a fan, but it's just like, I can't be doing the level of detail that Martha Stewart brings to her entertaining. I tried to make this like tangerine tower thing for the holidays this weekend, and I like had to go to Michael's 3 times, and then my friend Izzy. We made it work mostly thanks to my friend Izzy, but Martha's too perfectionist even for me. But this documentary is a great examination of a perfectionist, of a demanding individual. It spends a lot of time talking about Martha Stewart as the first self-made female billionaire in America. I think that is the distinction that they give her. It also charts how that money all goes away as her media empire falls apart, kind of post-trial, and also just because of the internet and the way things change. I would say to you that the last third of the documentary is not the most exciting part. The middle third is all about her trial for insider trading, which I remembered sort of, but also didn't remember at all. As Sean pointed out when he saw it at Telluride, James Comey figures prominently in this trial, which I just didn't know at all. And I do also wonder whether this movie came out on October 31st. So I wonder whether the timing and election related attention spans are part of the reason that people haven't seen it. Anyway, I thought it was an interesting examination of her trial and the media circus and the New York Post. Also, if you haven't read the New York Post response to this documentary, please look that up. All-time tabloid stuff. But for me, the reason to see it is Martha herself. She sits for at times very testy interview that is amazing. And it also has some archival footage, including this scene of Martha Stewart just she's not yelling. I just rewatched it. She doesn't raise her voice, but she dresses down a caterer, someone working for her, over the woman's choice of knife that to slice oranges. The knife that the woman chooses is not big enough for Martha Stewart's liking. And the way that the Martha gives the feedback and how frustrated she is and how clear she is that there is a right way to do things and that it's unacceptable when someone doesn't do it her way, haunted me. Going to be quite honest, just have thought about it every day since. So, maybe you need to see that as an insight into someone in your life, and maybe you just want to watch Martha talk about puff pastry or whatever. It's a great documentary, and it also, the way it's really good is because Martha's not thrilled about it. I'd like to read some choice quotes that Martha Stewart gave to Brooks Barnes at the New York Times in response to this documentary. She didn't like the music. I said to RJ, an essential part of the film is that you play rap music. Dr. Dre will probably score it, or Snoop, or Fredwreck. I said, I want that music. And then he gets some lousy classical score in there. Perfect. She doesn't like the camera angles. She wanted her grandchildren featured, which seems valid. They're basically not in there at all. The voice of her daughter is there, but, even her relationship with her daughter is sort of interestingly portrayed in the documentary. Here's my favorite quote. My magazine, my Martha Stewart magazine, which you might say is traditional, was the most modern home magazine ever created. We had avant-garde photography. Nobody ever showed puff pastry the way I showed it, or the glossaries of the apples and the chrysanthemums. And we prided ourselves so much on all of that modernism, and he didn't get any of that. So I wish you great joy and entertainment watching Martha and avant-garde photography and understanding puff pastry the way that it's meant to be shown by Martha Stewart. I will see you guys very soon. Happy holidays. Congrats on Juan Soto, everyone. Bye.
Thank you to the Big Picture All-Stars on this podcast. Thanks to Jack Sanders. Thanks, of course, to our producer, Bobby Wagner, for his work on today's episode. Later this week, we are doing our Best Picture Power Rankings, as promised, and I think we might be talking about Mufasa and Kraven the Hunter. Who is the real king of the jungle? Tune in to find out. See you then.